Well, good evening, guys. I put a trade on the pound yen. Just there's a lot of volatility with it, and it came up into some levels that I was looking at trading off of. I was waiting all day for them to fill, and they finally filled, and I got in at the money strike at it was 148.20 for a daily. The pound moved so much today that this was literally like the only attractive one left. I wanted to get sooner an expiry that expired sooner, but all the other ones weren't available in my price range. So this is the strike that I got. I did put in a working order for to bounce out of this at 28. I don't think it's going to get there based off of kind of my analysis. So I'm just going to go ahead and exit out, and then we'll talk over the analysis. So I'm going to bounce out of that. I got out of that. I'm not in it anymore. And the reason why I got in that was simply because let me just clear everything off, clear all my drawings, all my indicators that I don't really use the indicators too much. They're just kind of a I may use like an EMA for a potential dynamic take profit or something like that, because they do act as support and resistance, dynamic support and resistance at times. So if we just look at this chart here, and we'll zoom in on the hourly chart. We came up today and retested this high. Okay, failed to close above it, and I went short on a traditional forex up there, but I also got in a trade on the Nadex platform. So I took at the money trades as price was coming up into there. A little bit probably right around where that blue line is. I'd have to go back and look at the exact time, but that was a daily expiry. You can see potentially what's going on. We filled that first profit target basically coming out of these lows here. Just basically filled that profit target right there. Let me take this magnet off. Filled that profit target right up in there, and you can see the channel structure that's kind of forming. Now initially I had this. I had that one, and this was actually what I entered my binary off of. But once price spiked up, and looking at this a little bit more, I adjusted it to this because I felt that was kind of the true obviously you can see how perfect those three touches were. So that was what I adjusted it to afterwards. So when I did enter based off of this, it was a little premature based off of Nadex, and that I entered kind of up in and around here at the money. Took a little bit of drawdown, I believe, with this spike up, but like I said, I had plenty. Over at that time, I think I had about 15 or 16 hours left until the binary expired. So plenty of time for price to kind of work its way back down to this strike that I had chosen, which was really the only strike available. Let me bring it up and see exactly what strike. So that was the 7 a.m. I was really looking at the daily. Let me just bring it over here. I was looking at the daily 11 p.m. That would have been very nice, but you could see the very top strike was 147.60, and at the time price was 40, let's see, that's 40, 50, 60, 70 pips away from that. So I didn't, that was a little bit too out of the money for me. And yes, the potential's there for it to move that far, but I wanted to have plenty of time just due to the sheer volatility. And I didn't want to risk too much on this because of the volatility. There's a lot of Brexit talk going on right now, and I didn't want to be trapped in any trade that was just going to blow against me with too many contracts. So I just took 2 contracts on that trade, just kind of a at the money, lower risk for the account, and just in case that those levels just blew through, because I can potentially make a case for the pound going up further. So with that being said, that was the strike. The daily strike that I chose was that 148.20. I could have gotten into these, likely could have gotten into these other daily strikes at the money, especially this 148.40. But based off of the analysis at the time, that wasn't that wasn't where I entered. But yeah, so you can obviously see why I took profit. I mean, price is already bouncing a little bit, and this is kind of not something that you really see too often, but it's basing your it's looking at price patterns and looking at historical price and what it's done historically, and how price has reacted off of certain things. So when I was doing this analysis and I adjusted this, channel topper, trend line topper, whatever you want to call it, to like this, I noticed a pattern coming out of this. Once you kind of initiated it and established it right there, looking back at this, I noticed a pattern that seemed to be forming. So I wanted to obviously use that as kind of like a take profit, and it lined up pretty nicely with our previous resistance at the time. Right now if this pattern is going to hold true, I have no idea, but anyways, the pattern looks like this. Looking at the initial bounce off of these, that's what I was looking at, and essentially what I did was I just kind of boxed it off, until we finally got the little bounce. And when you train your eye to pick up little patterns like this, you can potentially see just that, patterns. Okay, so when we clone this, it's the exact same size, and bring it over, you can see how exact it was again. Okay, so doing that a third time, oops, cloning this initial box again, and voila, look at where we're bouncing at. So that's why I took profit when I did, and I didn't necessarily want to try and squeeze the extra pip or two that I needed to fill my working order. The strike may be safe, but you can see the retracement that we've had off of this identified pattern that has occurred at least twice now. So whether or not price is going to push up from where we're at currently, I don't know. I mean, it may just be bouncing a little bit before continue push down. We're kind of overextended a little bit, and at some pretty decent confluence, So whether or not it's going to continue that bounce up and put in a lower high like it historically has, I'm not sure. If this pattern doesn't really kind of stand out to me as nicely. And what I mean by this pattern is the retracement. So you can see, the first, it's not as precise as that initial one. So yeah, it may work out, it may end up being, this distance, or it may be increasing each time. Okay, so maybe the next time will be, more. Who knows? I don't know. So that's just something to kind of pay attention to. Not many people kind of train their eye for these types of things, and really, it just kind of pops out sometimes once you get to, in the charts all the time and training your eye for different little patterns. And some people train their eye for head and shoulders patterns. I've tried to kind of train my eye to like visualize these little things that aren't terribly common, that don't really stand out to the mass. Because everything's algorithm, everything's mathematical these days. Big banks are trading, algorithms are trading, computers, robots, robotic trading platforms, or whatever you want to call it, expert advisors, I think is what the technical term is. So everything's mathematical and is based off of measured moves, and these patterns pop up all the time. I see them all the time. So it's just a little way of, taking advantage of one extra piece of confluence. Okay, so if you can identify a pattern that's happened twice, maybe it's going to happen a third time. So we'll just have to see if, it's going to bounce from here. But I'm done with GJ on Nadex right now. Unless, we can kind of start putting in some, maybe some bearish structure like so. It can really kind of go both ways from here. If you look at the higher time frames, but this isn't like a terrible, big analysis video. I just wanted to put this recording on and just kind of capture that trade for you guys. So, all right, I hope this helps. Take care.